Here at the garage, we have one golden rule, and that is Lambda. But sometimes Lambda isn't Lambda. Stick around. Welcome back to the garage, and welcome back to another video about tuning Dodges. And this is a problem that it's not necessarily a problem on Ford and Chevy, even though it's present there, but not to the level where it's present on Dodge. And that is the value of stoich as far as the ECU understands it. So as we understand stoich in Lambda, which is 1.0 Lambda, is the perfect burn ratio. Smaller than that, 0.9, 0.8, 0.7 is rich. Anything bigger than 1 is lean, 1.1, etc. And that all works out great, especially whenever we're using external widebands and we set them to Lambda, and it doesn't matter what fuel we're running. We know that we're at 1, whether or not we're running pure gas or 85% ethanol, 1 is always stoich. But Dodge has kind of thrown a curveball into this whole situation, and you need to be aware of it, because if you're not, you're going to end up tuning these things wrong. You're going to skew the tuning on them, and I'll tell you why. So let's go ahead and open up. We'll start here we go. We'll start with my Hellcat stock tune, bone stock. Is before we put flex fuel on it and all that. So we're going over to the fuel general tab to take a look at the FA stoich table, and this is what determines the stoich fuel to air ratio in the case of Dodge instead of air to fuel ratio. Don't ask me why they had to be backwards for stoich. And so whenever the ECU is commanding stoich, this transcribes over to an AFR, or FAR as they would call it in the Dodge world, fuel to air. So you can see, because this is not the flex fuel tune, that we only have one value, and that is 0.0722. So let's go ahead, pop open our calculator.
Right, let's do the math.
Let's take 1, divide by 0.0722, 13.85. That is the AFR that it is saying is equal to 1.
Why?
If you have an external wideband, your wideband is not taking into account any of this math. It skews everything completely off. Now, let's jump over and take a look at this graph that Elite Tune School has provided us so we can get a better idea. The idea that stoich is equal to an AFR, I don't necessarily like that, because Lambda is Lambda is Lambda. All AFRs are calculated off of Lambda. You do not have a wideband AFR gauge. You have a wideband Lambda gauge, and then it does the math in the controller to convert it over to AFR. If you're looking at an AFR, you should be looking at it in Lambda. So 1 Lambda is equal to 14.7 gasoline, 14.11 E10. So if we go over and let's take a look real quick at a Chevy tune. Okay, here's my old my C7 Z06. We'll look at my old C7 Z06. We're going to go into engine, same area, fuel, general, stoich, AFR, not FAR, and open this table up. And here we have an ethanol scale, but you can see that they have set it to basically 14.11. It's 14.108. It's close enough to 14.11 that we'll consider it that. And so Chevy is tuning for E10. They're assuming that you're going to get E10 at every gas pump that you go to. And so they're just going to say that the stoich value for this ECU is 14.1. And given that this is not a flex fuel vehicle, it is going to be 14.1 across the board. Now, if it were flex fuel, we could go in at 0 and start at 14.7 and then go all the way out to 85 and make it 9.77. So, and that would be the correct linear scale from gasoline to E85 ethanol for 1 Lambda based on alcohol percentage. But Dodge has decided to throw a wrench into things and do a stoich value of 13.85. Now, why?
People want to think that they were special, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a couple different things out there that people are like, oh, well, maybe they just wanted to be a little bit rich. If they wanted to be a little bit rich, they could just add a couple percent. They don't need to adjust the stoich value. The other thing is maybe the fuel that was being used initially may have been E15 to E20. It had more ethanol than just 10% in there, and so what they ended up settling in was something that was reading around 13.88 on an AFR or an FAR scale. But what does that mean for tuning? Well, if we go over into our scanner, let's get connected up here. So what that means is right now our EQ ratio commanded is 1.0. And we would think that would be stoich. In this case, it is incorrect. We are not commanding stoich, we are commanding about 6% richer than stoich. And you can see the Hellcat's running rich anyways because it needs tuned. But if we were to take 1.0 commanded and run an external wideband and try to achieve 1.0, we're going to end up tuning it 6% lean because we're going to overcorrect from the 13.88 and push the airflow tables all the way back to a 14.7 range, somewhere in there, based on what your fuel is. If you're running E10, 14.1, even though it's actually trying to command 13.88, we're going to correct it back to 14.1 or whatever the ethanol content is. Now, if we go in and take a look at, let's look at my flex fuel tune. So now we're taking a look at the flex fuel tune. We're going to open up the FA stoich and we're going to actually have values in here. And so at 85%, 1024, let's open up our calculator again and you'll be surprised. 1 divided by 0.1024 is 9.76, and this is the values pulled from the Neiman 170, mind you. 85% ethanol is 9.765, and we should be at 9.77. So that is right. 9.77 is 9.765. If you round it up half a thousandth, we hit that 9.77. So we are scaled correctly on the 85% ethanol, but being that we are scaled off at the bottom end, because 0 and 10% is both 722, we're starting rich and then we're getting back to an actual stoich target. As we get closer to 85% ethanol, our error math is going to be closer. So at around 40%, we're going to be about 3% off. Then at 85%, we would be spot on stoich with a wideband reading. Now let's look at our scanner again because there is a simple way to fix this. If you are logging a non-wideband Dodge, oh, what happened? There we go. If you're logging a non-wideband Dodge and you are looking at an EQ of 1, you need to go in and verify what your FAR stoich table set to. Most likely it's going to be 13.8 AFR or that 7.722 or whatever. And that's fine. But what we can do then is create a simple bit of math. Let's go in here, and here's where I've got my Dodge narrowband EQ math, EQ error. And if you guys are interested, I can put this on the website for like $1 or something so you can download this math. Or you can look at right here, just pause the page and copy what I've done here. And so what we've got is 50119, which is our EQ ratio, our wideband sensor. In this case, it would be the factory built-in widebands, but if you had an external wideband coming in through like a CAN bus, AEM or something like that, it's still going to be the same parameter. And then we've got our EQ ratio commanded. And you can see everywhere that I have my commanded, I've taken it and I've multiplied it by 0.94. I've taken that 6% out of the value itself and then done the error math. And what that does then is essentially it makes our EQ ratio commanded, whenever it's 1, it's actually going to be 0.94 is what is commanding. And so we are going to be targeting on our wideband 0.94. And so if we go into our layouts and add chart versus time here, let's do chart layouts and let's just grab our injector duty cycle and replace it. And we'll grab our Dodge narrowband error. And don't get messed up. Just because it says narrowband, it means it's for a narrowband car. This is still using wideband values. But here you can see it is showing us that we are about 4% rich. Whereas if you look on these values, we're actually 10% rich for this car. But if this were a car that did not have a flex fuel tune on it and we were tuning it with an external wideband, we would be about 4% rich. And so we would only be removing 4%, as opposed to if we were to do this with the standard math, we would be removing an additional 6% of fuel. So hopefully all of this kind of clears up some of the funky crap that Dodge has done to make tuning more complicated. It's something that you need to be aware of. Now, somebody may say, well, why don't we just tune in AFR? Well, for one, we don't have a commanded AFR on Dodges. We only have commanded EQ. So you can't really command it to show you 13.8 and then use that for the error math. So we have to use the commanded EQ math. But the quickest and dirtiest and simplest way to do this correctly is to go in, multiply it by that 0.96 to remove our 0.94 to remove 6% from our commanded, and then we can use our actual wideband readings to hit our target. Once again, if you are on a flex fuel, less of an issue. It's more of an issue if you're on flex fuel and you're running straight gas, but as you get up above, say, 40% ethanol, and in this case we're at 56, that error minimizes. Once we hit 85, there is absolutely no error. It is commanding the correct stoich. Now, one other thing that you possibly could do, I don't know that I would, is go and correct the FAR stoich table to where it was commanding 14.7. But I have a sneaking suspicion Dodge wanted it to be 13.8 for a reason. We just need to make sure that we're correcting to that FAR. So if you have any questions, hit up the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe. If you need tuning assistance, go into the description. There's a link to the Patreon where I do all kinds of tuning, email support, one-on-one support, all that jazz. It is how you reach out to me to get some help. Hopefully this has helped clear the air on Dodge. I'm going to get back to it. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.